Good morning, everyone. I'm Joanne McKenzie-Hicks, and my project team, Eleanor Golding and Eric Lofthouse, and I will be giving you an overview of the study we conducted this past term for our SAIT Library and Information Technology Independent Research course. I'll begin by telling you that our experience living with the COVID-19 pandemic over the last year prompted all three of us to jump at the chance to participate in this research when our instructor and project client, Danita Castro, proposed this project last fall. Our primary focus was to look at LIT students and instructors' motivations, perceived challenges and benefits, and online communication platforms in our new learning environment. In our literature search, we were looking for past studies that included academic communities, online synchronous learning, types and levels of engagement, and technology used in online communities. It probably won't surprise you to learn that we found absolutely no studies that included in-person academic communities that pivoted suddenly to online learning. What we did find were several studies that contained subjects and participants who voluntarily engaged in asynchronous or distance courses. The studies we found contained qualitative data gathered from student experience, technological platforms used to communicate in a post-secondary learning environment, definitions and concepts of academic community generally, and student engagement and motivation. Our methodology consisted of gathering qualitative data through conducting focus groups with day students, including first year and second year students and instructors. There are some interesting distinctions between the groups. For example, the first year students have not met each other in person. The second year students had typical in-person academic experiences up until classes moved online in March of 2020. And the instructors, with minor exceptions, had little to no experience in teaching synchronous online courses. Each focus group involved Eleanor, our facilitator, guiding participants through 6 open-ended questions over the course of an hour. We used Zoom as our platform, recorded our participants' responses, and then later sorted those responses into major themes. From the focus groups, we collected a total of 122 pages of transcript material to parse through and organize into themes for our findings and conclusions. Next, I'll begin the discussion on the platforms mentioned by participants. Many platforms were discussed, but among students, Discord was the clear favorite. Zoom was commonly used across all 3 discussion groups. Interestingly, first-year students separated their preferred platforms by purpose, using Discord for social purposes and Teams for schoolwork. The second years had no preference based on purpose, using Discord for schoolwork and social purposes. Overall, Teams was only mentioned in discussion of schoolwork, not socialization, and none of the instructors uses Teams as their classroom platform. Gaming platforms used by students and instructors were not as commonly mentioned as Discord or Zoom. And now Eric will tell you more about our findings around the platforms.
Participants went about choosing platforms in several ways. Functionality, participants valued how easy the platform was to use and if it had any unique features. Familiarity, participants were more inclined to choose platforms they had used before. Purpose, participants also considered what the platform was going to be used for, as social and school life have different requirements. Privacy and security, participants considered what the platform was doing with their personal data to be very important. Scheduling and spontaneity, participants looked at if platforms could be used in a manner that did not require any advanced planning. Synchronous versus asynchronous, participants put value on how actively they needed to be when using the platform, in particular whether it allowed for asynchronous socialization. And fitting in, many participants were willing to use whatever platform had already been decided upon by the group. Next. So the next major theme is what motivated participants to engage in socialization. First and most common was the opportunity to connect with others. This was mentioned by all the groups, and we've highlighted it here with the top quote. Participants felt that keeping in contact with each other was important, whether it was maintaining existing relationships or forging new ones. Next was gamification. This was the idea of interactivity and socialization by using games or interactive elements like Kahoot quizzes or drawing on the slides to drive engagement. This was an important concept for instructors and is shown here with the middle quote. They felt it was particularly valuable in an online environment because of how easy it was to become distracted. Comfort in non participation, or the idea that socialization can come from simply being present in a group of people and listening to the ongoing conversation, was a factor that motivated many students to attend events. We've highlighted it with the bottom quote here. Knowing that they were simply welcome to come and chill and listen to conversations was greatly appreciated among many participants. Next. The motivation that stood out from all the rest was presented by second-year students. It's the idea that participating in social events, no matter the type, helped to lessen the burden of isolation. One second-year student referred to it as trauma bonding. Students felt motivated to go to events for this reason, and it's perhaps best summed up by the following quote: "If you can build a community, then things are so much easier, because when we have troubles or anything, you can share them, or if you have joy, you can share it too. And it makes the whole negative aspect of COVID so much better, because if you have to carry it all upon yourself, it's pretty effing heavy." Next. Participants were also asked about what was a demotivator for engaging in socialization. Screen fatigue was the first identified. Participants noted that staring at screens all day took a toll on the eyes and made them much less likely to participate in social activities afterwards. It's represented here by the top left quote. "This was especially challenging for students who worked part-time jobs that also involved an online part." Large group size was next. Participants found that large groups were intimidating to join and hard to manage. We demonstrated it here with the bottom left quote. "The inability to have multiple conversations going on at the same time was viewed as a frustration." Related to large group size was the lack of one-on-one conversations. We've highlighted it here with the quote on the right, which states, "I feel like online when you're in a social gathering, it's kind of like you're all in a circle and everybody pivots to who's talking, and it's almost too much when it gets to be too many people." Participants, especially students, found this to be a barrier to true conversation and were reluctant to discuss more personal topics that they might have done in person. In many cases, this was a demotivator to participate in social events. Next. The next theme discussed was the challenge presented by online socialization. There was an anxiety from first year students on whether or not they would actually get along when they met in person. We've highlighted it here with the top left quote. First year students felt they have not been able to connect and get to know each other properly due to the limits of socializing in an online world. Pre-established friend groups were also another challenge that was identified. We've selected a quote on the bottom left to represent this idea. Students, particularly first years, found that they were intimidated by the connections that already existed, especially if they had missed out on some of the social events from earlier in the year. Lack of spontaneity was also another challenge. Multiple participants found that the lack of spontaneity and the fact that social events had to be scheduled was frustrating. Students missed the conversation in between lectures, and instructors missed their in-office banter. This is best summed up with a quote on the right by one of the instructors, which states, "What I miss is conversations without purpose or planning. I miss spontaneous conversations as a method of stress relief, as opposed to having a reason and setting a date and time." So now Ellie's going to present more of our findings, as well as our conclusions and recommendations for further research.
So continuing on with our discussion of challenges, among students, there was an imbalance of participation demonstrated by this quote here. There are a group of people that talk and there are a group of people that don't. It was clear to all of our student participants that they knew who the people who spoke in class were. Some students spoke constantly, others never spoke at all, and of course, there are participants on all ends of that spectrum. It's not clear how much of the digital environment emphasized this phenomenon. However, it was especially a problem for the first year students, as class time was really the only opportunity they had to get to know each other. This resulted in some students knowing a lot about the talkative students and knowing nothing about others. There was also a sense of interaction becoming more of a performance. One instructor compared virtual teaching to feeling like an actor performing on a stage, but facing away from the audience, cut off from the feedback that they would normally get. Students noted a similar feeling, saying that they felt like they had to perform during social events instead of focusing on connecting with their peers. For instructors, this resulted in increased cognitive load during lectures, and for students, this contributed to their overall socialization fatigue. Next. So next I'm going to talk about socialization during lectures. For some students, they felt like they sometimes had to choose between learning and socializing. One student said, "I wait for the recordings and then learn from them and use class time and socialize because that's what I need it for." One instructor even said that they sometimes prioritize classroom interaction over teaching the content because they value community building just as much as they value teaching. Because that's really the only time people get to interact, they feel like they have to make the choice between their learning and their mental health. For students and instructors alike, there was the use of chat as a demonstration of engagement. There was a sense that opportunities for interaction like the in-class chat, could increase students' overall engagement with their peers, with the material, and with the instructor. So not only was chat a tool used by instructors to gauge students' engagement with the material, but it actually increased the students' engagement as well. Next. When discussing the use for breakout rooms in class discussions, there was a sense of guilt over not participating in breakout rooms that wasn't present in person. Students said that when they were in person, it was clear when some students were not having a good day, and it was understood that not everyone would be up to participating all of the time. They said that online there was sense of, the sense of care for the individual wasn't as present. They felt like they had to explain themselves to their teammates, and even then they still felt guilty. Students also noted that being at home changed their willingness to participate in class. You don't want to let the other people in your breakout group down, but it's also like, man, I'm cooking dinner right now. I don't care. This quote speaks to the fact that some students are more disengaged because they are physically at home. So they're less motivated to participate in breakout groups or in classes in general. It demonstrates the fact that students are not paying attention 100% of the time, and that they are likely doing things during class that they wouldn't be doing if those classes were in person. That sense of work-life balance is so skewed now because many of the barriers that students had previously put in place are now gone. Next. So now I'm going to touch on some of the conclusions we drew from our data. Students and instructors alike valued the ability to break into smaller groups and choose with whom they're speaking. All focus groups noted that they felt like they were only able to speak to the group as a whole much of the time. Our participants noted that online socialization was more draining and required more energy overall. There was an increase in both socialization fatigue and screen fatigue, which was a major factor in demotivating many of our participants to socialize. There was a common theme of students feeling like they were still engaging with their peers, even if they were only listening and not actively participating. They still valued people who were only acting as quote unquote audience members to the conversation because they were promoting focus to others that were actively participating. Gamification was a useful tool for motivating engagement, and participants added that they would like more of it in the future, whether that be in the form of Kahoots for in-class exercises or simply gamifying class activities. Lastly, there was an overall sentiment of, if this is what we can get, we'll take it. We know that virtual socializing isn't ideal, but if it's the only way that we're going to be able to interact for now, we're still going to do it. Next. And we have a number of recommendations for further research. So for the sake of maintaining homogeneous groups and because of our limited time frame, we chose to exclude distance students, but they could be included in further studies. We did not look into how people's economic status could have impacted their ability to socialize virtually. We made the choice to exclude economic factors with the understanding that it could likely be an entire study on its own. For the sake of confirming our data, a similar study could be done at another institution. Our data could have been impacted by the fact that we are part of the group that we are studying, and future studies could be done by researchers outside of the program as well. In our data, we had some participants noting their age as a factor in how comfortable they felt in the virtual environment. We don't know how universally age affected our participants, but we definitely think further research could be done into the difference between social natives and their peers and how they are able to socialize online. Many of our participants noted a severe mental toll caused by socialization through screens, and future studies could look into the long-term effects. Lastly, I wanted to touch on the development of online etiquette and its relation to virtual classes. Some of our participants noted a difference between the online etiquette run in classes run by different instructors, and future studies could look into the potential impact of those differences. So thank you all so much for listening to our participation, and we will be free for questions.